the Age of Fission radio show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. From 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, you gators and grannies, to this Friday morning edition. We're still going. Well, I got it in there a little bit early. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and you gators and grannies, to this Friday, February 16th, 2018 edition of The Big Puzzle. I'm coming to you live from my kitchen in northern British Columbia, where we have about 7 feet of snow on the ground and very hard to get around, but enjoying my winter. And I shouldn't say that, because I'm actually hating this. Welcome to the show. And, I've been away for a couple of weeks here. Work kind of got in my way there, that cursed word that generates a little bit of income so I can keep a roof over my head. But seems like I'm over it now, and I should be able to do my shows regularly going forward from now on. But today I've got Larry Woods joining me, and I've had numerous conversations. I've known Larry now for, I think, close to 4 years. I've known Larry, and I've had numerous conversations with him over the years. I love his level of intellect, and I got him in today to probably teach me a little bit about pyramids, because it's something I've really been kind of looking into a little bit. I know you guys were actually talking about it yesterday on a show, so I thought I'd get Larry to add in on that today. Welcome to the show, Larry, and thanks for taking time out of your day to join me.
Thanks, Barry. It's good to be back again.
So let's get right into this, Larry. You were going to talk to me yesterday about something, and I kind of said, let's keep it for the show, because I want people to hear what you've been looking into and what you've discovered.
Yeah, I've been looking at the Bosnian pyramids lately and trying to understand what's happening with them. There's a signal, a wave that can be measured coming out, being, how do I say this? It's on the top of the pyramid, okay? And as you get closer to a power source, the signal gets stronger. Well, that's really odd about this, because as you get farther away from the top of this pyramid, and it's only in a 13-foot circle, but as you get farther away from the top of the pyramid, the signal grows. It gets stronger. So what that means is that the pyramid is receiving, it's not projecting. And where it's receiving from is the atmosphere. And that brings up an interesting question. Where is that signal besides just the atmosphere? Where is it coming from? How is it being projected? This is a form of Tesla power, and this particular pyramid is a receiver for it. So, is there another pyramid in the area that is a projecting tower? Is there some form of of magnetic interference in the local area that's creating this phenomena. It really needs to be studied a whole lot more, and I'd love to get down there with some sophisticated test equipment.
Yeah, it's something that I'm just starting to kind of look at, Larry, here in the last little while, because I've had a few other people talking to me about it, and I've got a very limited capacity to understand this kind of stuff. So I'm kind of glad you're in here today, and maybe you can explain to people a little bit better than I can exactly how all these pyramids around the world seem to be tied into each other. And that's something that I've really looked at, and I was actually watching an article on that, a video on how all these pyramids line up with each other, how they all correlate with each other. It's not by accident, and it's a pretty fascinating subject.
Yeah, let's go to the Egyptian pyramids for a little bit. We know that the Great Pyramid is a power projecting piece of equipment. It's a generator. It's an earth battery that's projecting its power to the obelisks in the area, and they are the collectors. It works just like a Tesla system. You've got the aquifer under it. It charges the entire pyramid either through the frequency of the water booming up on the ceiling of that chamber, or the water flowing through the granite under the chamber, which generates electricity in itself. That goes up to the Baghdad battery room where they charged all the batteries. All the tunnels inside of the pyramid are conductive. They carried light bulbs with them to see. Just like you hold a fluorescent light bulb up to a Tesla tower and it'll light up. Same thing, same principle. So the power transmitted from the battery room up into the Queen's chamber, the first people that went into the Queen's chamber found mineral salts all over the walls. That meant that the Queen's chamber was filled up with some type of electrolyte that they used to perform electrolysis, which is making hydrogen. The hydrogen whistles up through more conductive tubes into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery was fitted with tuning rods of some sort, whether they were wood or metal or what, to control the frequency that went into the King's chamber. That frequency was probably in the microwave range, went up into the King's chamber. Above the King's chamber are multiple stones, 5 of them, I think, that are all completely smooth on 3 sides. But the top of them are all pitted and have holes in them and stuff. These massive stones were tuned to resonate at a specific frequency. They've just recently found another area that is about the same size as the Grand Gallery, that's off to another angle. I don't know if it was connected with the King's chamber. If it was, then it was a dual resonating system for multiple frequencies. So that's just how those work. And a strange thing, they found the pyramids on Mars that are in the same configuration as those in Cairo. And the word Cairo actually means Mars in ancient Egyptian. So is somebody trying to tell us something here?
This is deep, Larry. Sounds like somewhat of a science fiction movie, but the more I look into it, and kind of start to realize there's a lot to it.
Let's go even deeper. If you'll look at the temple complexes of the Mayans, especially, they're really easy to read. But let's go to the Mayans. Look at the temple complexes. What we do in our electronics, we try to get smaller. Well, that's not the way to go. That provides an individual thing. that only one specific person can use. Go macro, go big. Look at the temple complexes and look at a printed circuit board. They look exactly the same. So use the entire Earth as your power supply and your broadcasting supply, and that way every creature on Earth can have access to it. Just some things to think about. I'd really like to hear an electronics guy's ideas on whether the temple complexes could be actually huge circuit boards. It sure looks like it to me.
Well, now let me get this straight. These pyramids were all built by people with primitive rock tools using ox and carts to haul these blocks around, and then they built these pyramids within 2.5 inches of perfect square. Is that correct? I mean, you know, Larry, I this is a subject that I don't really dwell into a lot, but it's kind of caught my interest lately. But,
well,
you know, that's because there's so much other shit going on right now that I kind of focus on. But just the fact that one of the reports I read on the pyramids, I guess the Great Egyptian Pyramid is 2.5 inches from perfect square, is what I read. Pretty incredible these guys could do that with rock tools and carts and oxen. How many thousands of years ago? To say that they weren't influenced, I think you'd have to have your head in the sand, Larry, that there was some form of intelligence that actually constructed these pyramids, because they didn't possess the technology to build something within 2.5 inches of perfect square 2,000 years ago. Go ahead.
Not only that, the dimensions of the pyramid describe our distance from the sun, the distance from the moon to the earth, the circumference of the earth, the total landmass of the earth, lots of things. They give us a perfect calendar. There's a whole lot of things that they do. But that brings us to another thing that we've been researching lately is, you said, yeah, a whole bunch of primitives built them and they hauled them with ropes and stuff. No, not even close. If we go back to the before the Ice Age civilizations, all of those civilizations used stones larger than we could even think about moving today. Okay?
Right.
So how did they do it? They were primitive, supposedly. So how did they do it? Well, the Buddhists today in Tibet are building a wall with 2-ton blocks. Now that's really small blocks compared to the technology of the ancients. But these 2-ton blocks are being moved through sonic levitation. They place 60 horns around in an arc around in front of the stone that they want to move. The Buddhists chant, beat their drums, blow their horns, the rock resonates and levitates, and they push it with their finger where they want it to go. This is technology that the Buddhists are using today. This is part of the ancient, before the last ice age, advanced civilizations. We are the fucking we're the cavemen. We are not advanced in any means of the word. We are the most primitive creatures, and we're not but barely out of our Stone Age. The ancients...
we think they were the most intelligent thing on the planet.
Yeah, and we're not. We're not. And not only that, they're dumbing us down by the masses right now.
It's working very well, Larry.
Absolutely.
I see it every day. The zombie apocalypse is on us.
Really?
It is, man. Just talk to somebody and trying to have a normal conversation with somebody about a very relevant issue in our society now, and you're talking to a wall. It's like a blank, and I see that a lot.
My government is there to protect me, and they would never lie to me. They're only here for good.
Well, that's a subject we could get into, and that's a deep subject in its own, Larry. I mean, we could talk about that for an hour, but let's not go there today. Let's keep on the subject here if we can, because if you get me going there, I won't stop for an hour.
Yeah, let's go back to the pyramids and the other things. They're finding, if you look closely at some of the Chinese pictures of Mars, they're finding evidence of movement. They're finding evidence of water collection. They're finding evidence of ancient civilizations above ground. They found boron in the soil, which is one of the key elements of keeping the RNA stable. RNA is what makes our DNA. So there's absolute, I wouldn't say absolute, but there's pretty conclusive evidence that possibly in the past there was some form of life on Mars. And every spring on Mars, when the polar ice caps get smaller, there are green areas that show up in the Chinese Martian photographs. So,
where can a guy go see these? You got any links at all on this kind of stuff? I'd love to post it in chat, Larry.
I don't have any links. I don't have any links lined up hot yet, but yeah, I can send some to you a little bit later. I can't find them while I'm talking.
Okay. So kind of like walking and chewing bubblegum at the same time.
Well, it's hard for me to sit down and talk at the same time. I don't know, but yeah, these things are coming up all over, and it tells me that we think that we're an advanced civilization. Well, think about that just a tiny bit. 2,000 years ago, the Romans were using steam power. Okay? That's 2,000 years ago. Now in the atomic age, in the 21st century, we're still using steam power. Our atomic power just makes a hotter fire to make hotter steam. We're still using steam engines. We got to get into the 21st century. It's just silly. You don't have to destroy something. You don't have to burn something to make power.
Well, we all know, Larry, and you know, and anybody that's involved with solar, that everything we need for this planet is right over top of our heads. It just needs to be developed. The sun will provide, I believe, all energy the planet will need, and that's just one source of alternative energy. You know, one thing I wouldn't mind talking about for a couple minutes, Larry, is a hydrogen cell. Can you break that down for me exactly?
Sure.
I understand it, but a lot of people still don't quite grasp exactly what can be done with a glass of water.
Okay, a hydrogen cell is an electrolysis process that separates hydrogen and oxygen from water. Hydrogen burns, oxygen burns. When it's in a liquid form, it's water, H2O. Okay, you put a bunch of plates together, a few, an odd number. You put an electrode and an anode on one end of it and a cathode on the other end of it. More plates, one more plate on your anode than on your cathode. You put electricity to it. The anode is positive, the cathode is negative.
Right.
That's where you attach your electricity. That makes the water bubble. That bubbling is actually the separating of the water into hydrogen and oxygen.
Right.
The hydrogen comes out by the cathode, and the oxygen comes out by the anode. Somebody correct me on that. It may be backwards, but one of them comes out of each end. Okay, so that's just a separation process. And if you polarize that water, that whatever you're using, it could be a lot of different chemicals, but water will do it. If you polarize that electrolyte before you put electricity to it to separate it, the hydrogen molecules and the water molecules are attached with the hydrogen at about between 102 and 107 degrees. It varies a little bit. But when you polarize it, it breaks the molecular bond between those two hydrogen molecules, and it makes it a linear atom, a linear molecule with a hydrogen, an oxygen, and a hydrogen in a straight line. And that lets the hydrogen come off of it easier. Right. That's just an old farmer's trick for you guys that want to know it. The stronger the magnetic field, the easier it is to separate. With the proper magnetic field, you can get about 20% more hydrogen production out of your cell.
I'm watching many demonstrations now on the internet of one guy down in Brazil running his motorcycle on water. It baffles me, Larry, that the human race isn't going, wait a second, hold on. This technology exists. The U.S. Navy is going to be powering their vessels in the ocean. One report I read was by the year 2022.
They're already doing that on a lot.
They're doing it now. They're doing it now, but the whole U.S. Navy will be fueled by the hydrogen cell by 2020, I believe, or 2022 was the report that I read. So it's not too far away, Larry. And this technology exists. It can be put into all phases of society in a whim. And the need for oil would disappear, but we know that's not going to happen until we get an outcry from the public, because big oil is big money. Big oil runs the world. We know that.
Yeah. Well, there are 12-volt hydrogen systems out there that separate water at 1.5 volts. 1.5 volts. So, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Or 1.5 amps. I'm sorry, excuse me, 1.5 amps. That's not hardly any power at all. That's less than a light bulb worth of power.
Well, it sure would answer a lot of our problems, wouldn't it, Larry?
It sure would.
We're going to see this year on the planet, people are really going to start to notice the drop in food production. I've been reading reports here from India, from Pakistan, from Brazil, from Venezuela, from Iraq on crop drop. And it's absolutely mind-boggling that they're seeing, 30 to 40% reduction in crop production. This is only going to accelerate over the next 3 or 4 years, and people are really going to start to wake up to what's going on our planet, Larry. This is really going to start to grab people this year when we start seeing food shortages. And I believe we're going to see them in big time this year and accelerate in 2019, 2020. So we're really at a point now, I believe, that we really got to get busy fixing up the planet. And what you're doing with your coils and everything else that you're doing, and we talk here about the hydrogen cell, we talk about all the answers that are there in front of our faces right now to stop doing what we're doing to the most important thing in this world, and that's our planet. Right now, I'm sitting here looking at reports on mass die-off of animals. I follow that every day. It's just mind-boggling, some of the reports I'm reading for the first month and a half of 2018 alone. And they're accelerating. You know how many mammals we've lost on this planet. We can get into talking about that, Larry, but people are really going to have to wake up to the fact that we have to go down a different path. And talking about what you're talking about, I talk about cannabis as one of my main focuses of my conversation now, because that plant alone could rectify so many problems on this planet. But the human race has got to get involved. We got to get out of this matrix of the comfort we're in with our little bubbles and our jobs and our TV and everything else that distracts us from really looking at what we're doing. So I love talking about this kind of stuff because it really gives me hope for the future, Larry. It really does.
Oh yeah, let's talk about solar again. I know you really like solar. So let's talk about the optimal way to use solar. First of all, I need to explain a little bit about the cost of solar.
Mm-hmm.
It takes 300% more energy to make a solar photovoltaic cell than that cell will put out in its entire lifetime. That's number one. Number two is that when that cell breaks down, when it stops working, then it has to be thrown away, right? So it goes into the dump. That's toxic waste. There's a little bit of radioactivity in that and a whole bunch of nasty things that's toxic waste. So that's really harmful. But solar is the greatest thing that ever happened to us, because if you use a passive solar system and only use it to heat, then it's perfect.
Right.
It'll heat your water, it'll heat your house. That's all you need. It'll
Well, if
heat
you got
your
heat,
food.
if you got heat, you got electricity.
That's right.
Well,
So-
Larry, there's solar roof panels on the market right now that I can buy for my house slightly above the normal cost of a roofing shingle, a normal roofing shingle, that will produce all the power I need for the next 30 years. They're telling me that these have a 30-year life expectancy, that I'll be getting a check back from BC Hydro every month. I know people that are actually doing this. There's a guy down in Victoria that just did his house, and he posted it online that this month he got a check back from BC Hydro for $78 and no consumption bill, simply by covering his roof with solar panels. The technology, I believe, in solar, if we started spending, if the human race started spending a little bit of the money that we spend on military, on developing the solar cell, using 3D printers, with the technology that's coming online, if we had some of the best scientists in the world working on it, boy, you'd see advancements in solar at light speed. And that's what we have to do. We got to stop using nuclear. We got to stop using oil. We got to stop using fossil fuels. It's barbaric. Boiling water with nuclear is absolutely barbaric. And you talked about that earlier. What an insane way to boil water. Insane. And look what nuclear is doing to the planet now, Larry. It's just, and we're only 50 years into the proliferation of nuclear power, 60 years, maybe. Man, oh man, are we looking at a pretty dismal future with the problems we're having now with nuclear power plants. And it's just insane. We got to get rid of it. And I think, man, if I could be president of the world for 10 days, man, I would change it all. I would stop all production. I don't care what would happen to the economies. Right now, the most important thing is our planet. And we need to really get busy fixing that, Larry.
I totally agree with that.
Solar is one of the main answers. I mean, we talk about cannabis. We talk about all the things that we can do to offset what we're doing to this planet. And really, folks, if we don't do that, and I'm not a doomsdayer, I really consider from the bottom of my heart that I'm not a doomsdayer type of person. I'm realistic about what I'm seeing. And I understand how the food chain works in our world, how it was created. And I understand that if you can take pieces out of that food chain every day, and you continually do that, that eventually the food chain is going to collapse. And at that point, society's going to freak. The breakdown of our food chain, no food in the grocery stores. And it can happen very, very quickly. Then society will go, yeah, we got to do something about this. But you know what? By then, folks, it's going to be too late. This is, I believe, is the generation, Larry, that we got to make these changes. Really got to make some changes quick. And the answers and all the solutions, I believe, the solutions to all the problems we have are in front of our face right now as we talk. Go ahead.
Absolutely. In my mind, the solution to the power problem, and I hate to keep doing this, but the solution to our power problem is through magnetics. You can do anything with magnetics. You can produce any kind of power you need. It's all a matter of proper placement of the magnets. And that's not electromagnets. Magnetic induction is simply moving a magnetic field past the conductor, induces a charge into that conductor.
Yeah, I agree. And Larry, you brought that up, and I've talked to you before about the Mueller generator, and I think you've gone and had a look at it, have you not?
Absolutely, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and she right now is in Germany, and I'm not going to say too much more about what's going on with that right now. But anybody who wants to look into the power of magnetics, just Google a search on the Mueller generator. and have a look at the design and what Bill Mueller did. Bill Mueller, he passed away about 12 or 13 years ago. Bill, during the Second World War, Larry, was in Hitler's elite youth. You know, Hitler went around to the schools, every school in Germany prior to the war, and he took the smartest students out of all those schools, and he formed what they call the Hitler elite youth. And I forget the name of the city where they had the school, but Bill told me that he shook hands with Hitler probably 30 times in his life. Hitler would fly in, and the boys would all come out and line up in their uniforms, and Hitler would go down the line and shake hands. But he told me during the Second World War that they were working on all kinds of really cool stuff like sound cannons and frequency weapons, but they never really got the funding to develop some of these weapons. He said if they did, it would have changed the course of the war. But anyways, after the war, Bill got into inventing, and he came up with this concept of putting 17 poles opposed to 16 magnets. What the odd-even configuration does, he's using new generations of neodymiums. He's got it to a point now where 2 of the coils on the wheel are actually driving the wheel. So 2 coils are taking an impulse and driving the wheels. The other 15 coils are taking energy off the wheel. And it's over unity. And if you don't, I'm a believer in over unity using the power of the magnet, because it only makes sense that if we have these new generations of magnets, the neodymiums, that have so much power in them, Larry, that, you know, I've played around with them. I've taken neodymiums and opposed them to each other, and you get 6 inches between these magnets, and you can't push them any closer together. The same thing will happen if you turn them around and drawing them to each other. You'll get those things about 6 or 8 inches apart, and then get your finger out of the way because they'll slap together so hard that they break the magnet. Well, it only makes sense that if you got a magnet with that kind of power, that you should be able to make that magnet do work for you. And that's what Bill's concept is all about. And it's getting some real attention right now in Germany, Larry. So I thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah, that's a good system, and it does produce a whole lot more power than it consumes.
Well, yeah. It's an example. If person doesn't believe in perpetuality or over unity, then I urge them to really go look at what Bill's done. And in the near future here, you're going to hear a lot more about his generator, because they're talking about producing
itself through induction.
Exactly. And you're going to hear a lot about it because they're talking about building these generators on a scale of a 30-foot generator using massive magnets and massive poles, and watch the power that'll come off these poles when you start spinning it, man. You know, the first generator in a Ford automobile in 1918, Henry Ford produced a generator that was 16 poles opposed to 16 magnets, and when you spin them, it creates electricity. The only problem is it took more power to turn the wheel than it actually produced. But it was the generator for the car. But that concept, if you take that odd one out and you go to an odd even configuration, the magnet will never line up on the exact opposing pole. So it's always wanting to move to the next pole. It's an incredible design, and it's really starting to gain some attention. So, and
it's incredibly simple. That's what the problem with today's technology is. Everybody wants to make it more complicated so that somebody else can't work on it. If you take all of the unnecessary parts off of a car, you're going to have a machine that runs forever.
Yep.
So, yeah, simple is best. The old ways are best. If you look back at the way it was done, at the way generators were initially made, they were less efficient than we can make them now, but they lasted. It was something that didn't break. There's a museum in the Netherlands now that's remade all of the old generators, taken the rusty parts off and fixed them, and they're producing power for an entire community out of an antique generator. And it's more efficient than what they had to start with.
Well, I was reading an article on a company in Germany that's going to bring an automobile online next year that the axles are surrounded by magnets, and as you drive the car down the road, it produces electricity.
Absolutely.
They're claiming this is going to boggle people's minds, but they're claiming that you'll produce so much. If you were to take the car for a 500-kilometer drive, you'd store enough power in the batteries in this car that you could plug your house into it at night and run your house off it. And I'm going, huh? I had to read this twice. But it only makes sense if you have four wheels in an automobile turning all the time and they're lined up with magnets on a steel pole. You're going to create incredible amounts of electricity.
That's right. And you put a toroidal coil around each of those, and instead of a battery bank, you have an initial capacitor bank that's charged that makes the car start to roll. As it starts to roll, it recharges that initial bank and charges another one. That secondary bank is what you plug into when you get to your building and power your building from the car. It's a perfect
I got to step away
concept.
Larry, I got to step away for 2 seconds here, okay? I'll be right back.
Okay.
Keep talking.
Okay. So, yeah, electric cars should be without batteries. You have instant power. You have anything that you need. You can provide additional power by adding more coils and larger capacitor banks. And with the supercapacitors that we've got going these days, the sky's the limit to what you can power when you get to where you're going. And not only that, on these tube trains, the subway systems coat the walls of those tunnels with graphene so that when the train moves through the tunnel, it generates power.
Yep.
That way you can power all your cities along the train track with the train. There's so many ways that we can improve our power systems with the new type of technology that's coming out. It's going to be great if we'll be allowed to use these new technologies. There are some that are not harmful at all. Speaking about harmful, we've got to change the frequencies of all of our electronics, just every single bit of it. This 440 frequency that the Rothschilds put in during the Second World War is what's disturbing the world. And back to the pyramids, there was an American engineer, the guy that goes over there with all of his squares and things and looks for tool marks and those. He went over with a group that tested out the frequencies in the pyramid. They went to the king's chamber, and it's resonating at 441. That's the most disastrous thing that I've heard. When you put two frequencies that are not in harmony with one another together, they tend to balance out, and both of them, one will gain a little frequency and one will lose a little frequency until they're finally resonating at the same frequency. Well, we put 440 into this world so much that now instead of resonating at 432 as it should, the pyramid, the king's chamber, is resonating at 441. When it gets to 440, that pyramid will be broadcasting harmful frequencies. So we've got to change.
Frequencies are something I'm really going to have to do some serious research into, Larry, because I'm starting to understand exactly what they can do with frequencies and how they can be used as a weapon against the human race. And how really, I mean, they're laying all these new 5G grids out. The whole planet's going to be under a 5G grid.
If you're next to 5G, move.
Well, they're going to put them up apparently in the cities every 800 to 900 feet apart. There's going to be a 5G.
And the cancer rates will go up. The sterility rates will go up. Within 3 generations, nobody will be able to have babies anymore. This is the worst thing that they can do to us. Let me offer a solution. Okay, everybody's griping about it. Let me give you the solution. The Earth resonates at 432. That's the frequency of the Earth. Something really close to that. 54 cycles will operate both 50 cycle equipment and 60 cycle equipment. That's what everything in the world is, 50 cycles or 60 cycles. When you change that to 54, 54 times 8 is 432. 432 is Mother Nature. 54 is, if 432 is middle A, 54 is low A. So we're resonating in perfect harmony with nature. So that's what all of these magnetic generators generate at a higher frequency than that. So their frequencies will all have to be modulated. Instead of modulating them to 50 cycles or 60 cycles, modulate to 54. And that means that all of our power will be healthy and not harmful. Your electronics won't harm you anymore. The MRIs will not harm you anymore. The X-rays will not harm you anymore. Your cell phone will not make you sterile anymore.
Interesting. It really is. How can that play in with an RFID chip? Can they alter our frequencies through a chip, Larry?
Oh, yeah.
Of course they can.
Absolutely.
Of course
and the smart meters on your house and the cell phone towers. Every cell phone tower out there has got military antennas on it that not only receives, but they broadcast. They not only broadcast their communication signals, they broadcast any frequency that they want to put through them. Then they can make you sick, they can make you docile, they can make you want to go to sleep, they can make you angry, they can kill you. They can do anything they want. Through frequency, anything and everything can be achieved, either healthy or unhealthy.
See, because you're going to see in the next couple of years, Larry, a really, really big push to the RFID chip. We know we're going to get a big push for a cashless society. So my question is, and this is something I think people should really ask themselves, is that ever get to a point where you allow them to put a chip in your hand? Could they send a frequency signal out to that chip and make you drop dead on the spot?
Absolutely.
I knew the answer to that, but
not only that, but a lot of the people that are getting the chips are developing cancer around the chips because the frequency is not healthy. The frequencies they broadcast in is not healthy. And that thing's in there broadcasting all the time, using your body's electrical signal to give it power.
Boy, I'll tell you, if society allows this to happen, Larry, we are in a lot of trouble. Because we're talking about the complete control of society. You're talking about every transaction you ever make in your life going forward will be monitored and put onto a computer.
Yeah.
And that to me is a really, really talk about losing our freedoms. To me, that is one of the most scary things that I can wrap my mind around right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then, of course, I had to put that question out to you because I've had that conversation about frequency impulses in these RFID chips with another person who I have a great deal of respect for, and he said the exact same thing, that they have the capacity, they have the technology right now to send an impulse through that RFID chip that will disrupt your body's frequencies and make you drop dead on the spot. And I go, wow, if they allow that to happen, if people allow that to happen, and if it ever comes to a point where society, the government goes rogue against society, and you think that guns are going to be something that will protect you when you can't protect yourself against a frequency, maybe that's something we should talk about, is how we can protect ourselves against frequencies. What do we have to walk around in a Faraday box?
Just about. Just about these days. Okay.
We got to invent something. Got to make up something that, like a Faraday shield that will go around your body that doesn't hurt your body and is conducive to your body's frequencies. That'll stop all this. I mean, if we can come up with something like that, Larry, we could have a good little business going, because we're seeing more and more of this all the time.
Well, there's already Faraday clothing, and we anticipate putting out brand of our own Faraday clothing with reclamation circuits in it, so that the frequencies that they're protecting you from can be transmitted as power into one of your pockets. So you just slide your cell phone into your pocket and it charges it while it's protecting you. But see, I get flabbergasted. These frequencies are so evil and so harmful. It's not us right now that are specifically suffering. This is next generation and the next generation. We're killing our great-grandchildren. And we got to do something about it, like you said. But the only thing that can be done is if we all get together. Changing the frequency to 54 cycles is a matter of turning one dial at the power plant. One dial on each generator will change that generator's frequency to 54 cycles. It's all they got to do. So the solution is available. We just got to force them to do it.
Boy, I don't have the answer to this one, Larry. I want to go back to the day of rotary phones.
Really?
I really do, man. There's all this new technology. I mean, I talk with Stone a lot about AI, and it's something else that I'm really having to start to look into, because some of the implications of AI just blow my mind, man. But it's where we're going here in the near future. Scary, some of the stuff they're coming up with, Larry. Just absolutely mind-boggling.
Well, I feel like if they give an AI absolute control over everything, that they will eventually look at the human race and say, well, all you are is a destructive force, and get rid of us.
That's their plan, Larry. 500 million is where they're heading. And if this kind of technology exists that they could kill us with a frequency, and even without an RFID chip in your arm, if they're able to do that from space with space-based weapons, which, you know, I've said this many times, and I know you know this is true, that their technology that they have is probably 20 or 30 years ahead of what we know. So who knows what kind of little toys they got set aside for that particular time when they want to unleash them on the human race. And that's something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of scary, isn't it?
It sure is.
People think, you know, guns are going to protect you. I think they've already thought about that, and they've had their think tanks, and they know how society's going to respond, and they know how they're going to treat society. And boy, I'll tell you, we're getting into some pretty crazy times, Larry.
Well, okay, let's talk about chemtrails for just a minute. We know that there's aluminum, at least, that they're putting out in nanoparticles there, along with all kinds of other stuff.
Thorium, strontium.
Yeah.
And some people say mercury.
Yeah, whatever it is, we know that there's at least aluminum in it. Okay, why aluminum? The human body is a machine. We are an electric machine operated on electricity. We convert our food into electrical impulses. That's what we do. That's how we operate. Our machine has to have the proper food in it in order to operate optimally. You can't put diesel in a gasoline engine. What they're doing with all this aluminum that we're breathing is making us more conductive, so that when they do their electronic frequency murder, it's easier. We conduct it better. We're more susceptible to their harmful frequencies.
Well, that's just one of the side effects of it. I mean, aluminum, if you look at the rise of Alzheimer's in North America, man, it's the fastest rising disease in North America, and the numbers are just going right off the charts. Well, if you take a person that's died from Alzheimer's and take their brain apart, you're going to find massive levels of aluminum, and they're doing that all the time now.
My parents got a full set of aluminum cookware for their wedding present.
Mm-hmm.
Back when aluminum was first come onto the market.
I remember. And then all of a sudden they come up with, hey, wait a second, this stuff ain't very good for you. I think we better go to stainless steel. Too many people are getting affected.
Let's go to Teflon. Let's go to Teflon.
Yeah, that's even better. Yeah, take the Teflon coating off and start eating that, man. I use cast iron, Larry.
Absolutely.
Have been for years. I got about 8 pieces of cast iron in my house, and boy, I'll tell you, it's the way to cook.
Absolutely.
But then, we're surrounded by all kinds of things. But, the more and more that we become aware of all the things that are actually affecting our body, Larry, we can slowly but surely start eliminating those things from our life. And I try and do that every day. I stay away from bad food. I take a list to the store that contain all foods that contain GMOs. And I absolutely refuse to buy anything that contains a GMO. And you know what? I'm eating fine. I get my chicken from a farm that's field-raised chicken, and I know what they're putting in these chickens, and we grow our own vegetables. We're lucky that way. I know people in big cities, they say, well, we can't do that. We can't do that. Well, bull, you can grow a vegetable garden in your living room and be eating vine-ripened fruit all the time and vine-ripened vegetables all the time in your house. You can set up an aquaponics system in your house in a 10 by 10 foot room and provide your family with fresh fish and fresh vegetables, vine-ripened vegetables, which is the key. Because your vegetables, there is no phytochemicals in a vegetable until it gets to the point of vine ripening. A tomato that is shipped to a grocery store green, when it becomes red in the store, it looks good, it tastes good, tastes like a tomato. You think you're doing your body good, but there's absolutely no nutrients in that tomato. Nutrients come into a tomato the last 3 or 4 days of its life on the plant. That's why it's so important to harvest your vegetables when they're at the stage of vine ripening. And they'll be full of the phytochemicals that attack and kill cancers and all the other stuff to support your immune system. But we're not doing that. People think they're eating healthy. They're eating crap. So you can do a lot of this in your own house, Larry. I am now. I've got a tomato plant in here. I've got a blueberries growing in one corner here. It's not a lot, but it's a start. I was actually lucky this year that I did a co-op grocery or a co-op garden with some friends of mine, and we had about 3 acres of land and managed to grow a lot of vegetables this year and canned and dried a lot of it. So these are kind of things that really, our food is so toxic, and you talk about aluminum in our air. They're spraying our planet with so much glyphosate right now. It's incredible. The biosphere is under attack, and of course, this is ending up in our bodies too. And then, of course, they add some vaccines in there, and then they get a little fluoride in there, because fluoride actually facilitates the movement of heavy metals through the brain. So they got that one down too. They got us figured out from all angles, buddy. Slow kill. And now we see the effect on society. People are just sick. Canada and the United States, we're the sickest nations on the world right now, Larry. If you don't believe that, go to World Health Organization statistics and look at the numbers for all the countries in the world. North America, Canada, and the United States, we're leading the world in most categories now, if not all of them. We're really close to leading them in all. But, we spend 10 times as much on healthcare as the next closest country in the world. Yet we're the sickest people in the world. So what's going on? Something's not working at all. It's working for
called the AMA is not working. All the vaccines that they give you.
And the CDC is a joke. And the CDC is a joke. And Monsanto and CDC, if you look at the revolving door between those organizations and start tying all the pieces, and then go to the FDAA and start looking at the revolving door of the people that are involved there and how they're tied in with Monsanto and how they're tied in with CDC and all the conflict of interest, it just boggles your mind. It really does. But it's there. People don't take time to look at it, Larry.
I think the only solution is just for people to become more aware.
Educate yourself.
Yeah.
Take some time. Take a look at what's in our food. When you want to get a vaccine, take the insert, take it home, and cross-reference all the ingredients in that vaccine, and then you will not put it in your body. But most people can't take the time to do that. I mean, look at the flu this year, Larry. Unbelievable.
Make your doctor sign a document that he will take responsibility for all side effects.
They won't do it, Larry.
That's right.
I know that. And we're down to about the last, we've got about 4 minutes left now, Larry.
Oh, wow.
Boy, this hour's gone really quick.
It sure has.
I was just getting warmed up here, buddy. But listen, is there anything you want to talk about for the last couple minutes of the show? And then I'll talk for a couple minutes and close out the show for the day.
Yeah. There are thousands, literally thousands of YouTube videos on ways to make energy. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, some of them work, some of them don't. Don't take anybody's word for anything. Check it out for yourself. And don't believe me. Don't believe anything that I say. Check it out for yourself. Don't let anybody take up space in your head. Make your own decisions. You are a product of your decisions. You know how to make the right ones. Take care of yourself, your families. Love each other. Be kind to one another. Treat everybody just like you want to be treated. And the world can possibly turn out to be a better place. That's it.
Well said, Larry. Very well said. And I couldn't agree with you more. It really kind of comes down to treating your friends and your neighbors the way you'd want to be treated yourself. And I kind of think about that every day. I try and smile and I try and be friendly to people all the time. And, you know, it has an amazing effect on people when you kind of open up your heart and you're talking to them with true love out of your heart. And I see that in you, and I see it with a lot of the people that I'm involved with. And we really do see the problems coming. And we're really, really torn apart about what we see coming for our children. And that's what really drives me every day, to try and get people really, really aware that we're at a time now in human history, and I honestly believe that if we don't make catastrophic changes in our society, even though to a lot of people right now on the surface, everything seems to be okay. Sure, there's a few issues here and there, but we're going to see events accelerate, especially I talked earlier today about our food supply and how that's really going to be ramped up and how people are really going to start noticing it here in the next couple of years. Well, I think time is short for the human race to really make some monumental changes, and it's not going to happen if you let the government control what's going on in our lives. I think we really need to see the formation of a lot of grassroots movements, because everything starts at home. I agree with you, Larry, that being responsible to your family and your friends is probably the most important thing we can do, on top of being responsible to our planet. And that is something I think about every day when I see another species go extinct on this planet. It breaks my heart, but it's happening every single day. We're losing at least one or two species every day of our life now. How long can this go on, folks, before there is nothing left? I don't know what else to say. I really don't. It boggles my mind that people can't get a little bit more involved in something that's so relevant and so in our face now. And
the world of tomorrow can be your world today if you make it.
If we don't change it, though, Larry, I think you'd agree with me that what we're seeing for our children in the future, if we don't make catastrophic changes, is not a bright future. And I know that I've enjoyed my years on this planet, that the planet has provided with me lots of abundance. I've just really enjoyed my life here. It's been a very enjoyable experience. But I look at what's coming for my children, and I can't look in the mirror right now and tell them they're going to enjoy the same things that I did. So that's why I'm here, folks. That's why I sit here every week and try and open my heart up to you guys and tell you that I love you all. I love my kids. I know you love your kids, and that's why we're here doing what we're doing. Thanks for joining me, guys, and I'll be back next week, same time, same place. You have a great day, and thank you, Larry, for joining me, buddy. Always a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, Barry.
Okay, I know the banner's going to kick in, guys, and have a great day. God love you. God bless you. Bye-bye.